I am Sarah Farguson. I am from Virginia, as Marcy mentioned, and I work with Corner Shop Creative. We are a full-service digital agency that specializes in the internet for nonprofits. So we do everything from building and designing websites to supporting and maintaining them, as well as digital strategies. So you have this beautiful new website, and you're like, well, what do I do now? So this might be iterative design and development, marketing through ads, SEO, campaign management, kind of soup to nuts, whatever you need. And so I oversee everything that is not building websites. And I've been with the agency almost a decade now. But before that, I've done sort of everything under the sun for nonprofit management. So I've run capital campaigns, I've done major gift fundraising, capacity building, strategic planning. And really, I call myself a nonprofit junkie because I love missions and I love operations. Those are two of my favorite things. I already said that my favorite dinosaur is a Triceratops, and it will come in handy during today's presentation. I see the slide has changed. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? I'm just going to keep on talking. So what this session really is about today is when and why should you put customizations into anything that you do in engaging networks? We're all here because we love engaging networks, or we're thinking about using engaging networks, and we want to know how to leverage the platform the best we can. And sometimes that means having developers and coders come in to build cool stuff, but also it might mean using the powerful tool at your disposal. So we're going to talk about when and why you might want to do that, best practices for managing that once you decide to go down that road, just common pitfalls and considerations that we talk about with our clients, and then strategies for future-proofing your customizations, i.e. PCI compliance. So yay, my slides are here. Jeff Goldblum, everybody. This is me and my family. All right, so has anyone ever wanted to add fancy functionality or styles that required writing code? Just a show of hands. Most people in this room, we see something cool and shiny, we're like, I want to do that. And it can feel a little like this, where you're just like, I hope it works. I hope it doesn't break things. But oftentimes we can find that, the customization that we wrote 2 years ago doesn't work anymore. It can slow down the load times on our forms, which we know are super important, as most people are, loading a donation form or an advocacy form on their mobile device. Of course, security and compliance issues. If you're adding any sort of JavaScript or third-party code, that just opens up a whole can of worms. And then the last thing that I think is especially important to nonprofits is the documentation of that, or understanding what does this customization do, who wrote it, why did we do this, and not having that handoff happen. So let's talk about when you might want to add a customization and when maybe there's a better option. So the first one, which I think is the most important, which is what does this feature, what is its goal? What is it providing us that we can't maybe get through, another means? If you're just doing it because you saw Charity Water do it, that's not a compelling reason. I can count the number of times on probably my hands, my toes, and everybody else's in here of somebody sending me something cool that they saw Charity Water do and they want to do it. But then I always ask why. What's the goal? Does this support, something that you're trying to achieve? I've already talked a little bit about the built-in features. We talked about earlier today some of the upcoming features that are going to be rolled out. And I think we're talking more about road mapping later today. But basically, is there something already built into the platform that can accomplish the same thing? We always want to be leveraging platform functionality because that's going to save you a lot of the time and headache that we're going to talk about later. Third, what sort of risk or technical debt are we opening ourselves up to? I talked a little bit about, the handoff and documentation lapse that happens. So, like, are we making future us lives harder? And is it worth it? And then the fourth consideration is, are we solving a problem or just masking symptoms? Are we putting lipstick on a pig, if you will? And the best way to sort these out is through A/B testing. And a lot of people talk about A/B testing, and I think the most important thing here is making sure that you go about it the right way, because a bad A/B test will not give you the right outcomes. So you want to start with a hypothesis. If you remember, like, elementary school science class, the scientific method, that's what A/B testing is. Essentially, talking to my daughter about the scientific method when she wants to try something out, I always say, start with a hypothesis. What do you think is going to happen? You always want to make sure that you're testing one variable at a time. So, if you want to test conversion rates by, changing the color of the donate button, only change that. Don't also change the word donate. Don't also change up your homepage. You want to make sure that the variable that you're testing is what's actually causing people to convert more or less. The good news is that Engaging Networks has a lot of built-in features to help you do this. You can do A/B testing in forms and emails, and if there's something that Engaging doesn't have, the tool that we use often is called VWO. It is a free A/B testing tool up to a certain degree, but I would say for 99.9% of our clients, it fully satisfies their needs. You'll always just want to make sure about implementing it in a PCI compliant way. And then just documenting your results, creating that feedback loop for making smarter future decisions. And that can really help justify whether or not it is worth moving forward with the customization that you want to meet. Did we have statistical significance? That's always the hardest word to say. And, does it actually meet our goal, or did it do the opposite? And so we actually don't want to go with full implementation. All right, so I talked a little bit earlier about, putting lipstick on a pig, or the Band-Aid approach. When you put one customization on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, just like a house of cards, it's quickly going to crumble and expose you to a lot of risk and create a lot of fragility. Often uncoordinated scripts, kind of made one off at a time, have unintended consequences where, we changed this thing over here, but we didn't realize that this customization over there was dependent on what was over here, so now we've got to fix this thing, and it can create this kind of snowball effect where you're taking on more work and more risk than you thought in the beginning. Again, just the more scripts that you're loading on a page, the slower the page is going to be to load. And it could ultimately create kind of a tangled cobweb of, if there ever is an issue with your form, which we want to make sure that we can avoid at all costs, it can be really hard to troubleshoot because you're essentially looking for a needle in a haystack. There can also create a lack of ownership, again, through not properly documenting this, or really understanding what the code block does. And this just creates your technical debt to grow at a really exponential rate. I'll talk a little bit later about a case study that we did with a client where we kind of went on this journey of, okay, we started with this Band-Aid approach, but then soon realized that we needed to step back and really look at this holistically. So with all of that in mind, you've come to the conclusion that, this customization does meet a specific goal. We've A/B tested it. It does convert like we want to, so we want to implement it across the board. This is just a great matrix to kind of demonstrate use cases for customization, so things that call them always on, so those are things like analytics, logos, footers, things like that. Things that are page specific, so maybe that's campaign specific language or branding that you're going to use like essentially like the same template, but just minor tweaks here and there for specific pages. Some, but not all pages, very similarly like something that maybe is special for a year-end campaign. And then something like larger script libraries that would be like, your CSS or any sort of like third-party code that you would be loading. The middle column, these should be words that are all familiar to us in Engaging Networks land. This shows you where you'll want to put those customizations. So for things that are always on, in the template is where you want to put them. So every form that uses that template has those components. The page-specific logic, you want to put that in a code block just on that page, since it really only will need to affect that page. If something's going to be used on some pages, we really like to leverage shared code blocks in Engaging Networks. That way you have one place where that code lives, and so if you ever need to update it, you don't have to update it in 17 places. And one of my favorite things that Engaging Networks does is if you change something in that shared code block, it'll yell at you of like, hey, you're making a change and it's affecting these 47 pages, which I think is a great way that, the platform itself kind of saves you from your own technical debt and, making changes that could have unintended consequences. And then for any third-party scripts or those, large script databases, we always recommend hosting those externally as they'll load quite faster and just are they keep your code a lot more lightweight. So the third column goes into more details with links to the Engaging Networks knowledge base about how you can leverage those different elements. So if you have a in-house developer or you want to dabble in creating any customizations, definitely this is a great matrix to either screenshot or memorize or come back to later in the presentation. You've heard me say the word documentation 47 times, probably because I started as a project manager in my digital journey. And so documentation was king, just like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so I like to think of putting documentation into these 3 buckets, kind of like priority. So your global bucket is going to be the things that you always need to make sure are working. If this does not work, then something is broken. So this would be things like, Google Analytics tracking. We always want to make sure that the data is flowing in there so we can know if a campaign is successful. And this should always be tested when making any changes to the pages, just to make sure that you can ensure those quality assurance protocols. Conditional would be, again, like we use it on some things, but not everything. And this can help to let staff know what exists and what's at their disposal to implement. And then there might be those things that, again, you saw something cool and you tested it and it converted well, but you really only want to implement for select campaigns. That way it's easy to know this is not mission critical to the functionality of our pages and that this is a specific use case. So pitfalls and more importantly, how to avoid them. I think let's talk mostly about the how to avoid them because there are, so many pitfalls with, writing customizations, and there's so many things that you can do in Engaging Networks. Going back to the original quote, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. With the presentation earlier, one of the things that us at Cornershop are really relying on AI to do is create documentation and travel logs for customization. So we don't even have to do it. It's one of those things that we can automate more of the grunt work, if you will. I don't know if anybody enjoys writing documentation, but leveraging tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or those built-in AI assistants in the code editors can help to create change logs and other things that'll be really helpful to avoiding that technical debt. While AI is valuable, there is nothing better than human testing. We maintain and manage about 300 WordPress sites, and we update their plugins every week. there's no way a human could go through and review 300 sites on a weekly basis. So we do automate that, but at the same time, we do have a human look at the ones that fail and look for what is wrong. So do not discount the power of human intervention. And I think it's also just important to store things in a way that's easy to reference in the future. Use things like naming conventions and also document what those naming conventions are for, especially in the world of automation and AI. One of the things that I've found that organizations struggle with, and even our own agency kind of struggles with, is AI is only as good as the data that it is using. And so if you're not thinking organization first, it can be a real challenge to leverage some of these tools moving forward. But what about PCI compliance? So scripts are really the reason why the new PCI requirements exist. There's so much third-party code being loaded on these pages that are, getting transactions, that it opens up a lot of risk and vulnerability. And really, the more scripts you are on a page, the more you need to be scanning them, and the higher the likelihood that there will be a vulnerability caught one way or another. So again, think about the risk that you're taking on when thinking about if you want to implement something and really how you're going to be doing it. So I see Patrick in the back of the room. I don't have a dinosaur reference for this slide, but it was shared with me that I am in Toronto, and this is the home of the Raptors, so go Raptors. But this whole idea and presentation was really inspired by our work with UNICEF Canada. They came to us last year just very organically and said, hey, we want to do, some updates to our donation form and A/B testing, which my ears perked up, and I was like, yes, let's do that. That sounds great. And as we began A/B testing and creating these customizations that they wanted to test out, it really started to open up our eyes to some improvements that they could make, knowing that PCI was coming down the pike. We knew we had, this coming in 2025, and there was just a lot of third-party code and a lot of JavaScript running on their pages that wasn't really necessary. It may have been at a time when maybe these features weren't built into engaging networks, or maybe they served a purpose at one time but were really kind of unnecessary now and really creating some friction for the donor. And so about 6 months into our A/B testing, we really had a larger conversation about, the technical debt that we were taking on, and the kind of house of cards that was starting to stack up with all of the customizations that had been done. And so we are right now in the process of really rebuilding those forms the same way that they are, but keeping in mind leveraging engaging networks, really having conversations around, like, is this feature necessary? What is the goal that it's helping to achieve, so that we can really, create an optimized form, not only for the donor, but for the organization to manage, that requires the smallest amount of risk to take on in the future, as nobody wants to think about the vulnerability of their forms and maintain and manage that. So what decisions can we make that are in the best interest of that as well? So with that in mind, I hope the 4 things that you take away from this as you consider, ways that you can leverage Engaging Networks platform, ideas that maybe your fundraising team, your marketing team come to you and you want to implement or try out, is making those strategic decisions on customizations. If you can, please A/B test. It doesn't have to be this, big, scary thing. It can be simply, again, let's try changing the button color, see what happens. And it can really provide a lot of insight, and some of the hypotheses that you may go into it, you'll be surprised by what does and does not win in those tests, but it can really open up your eyes to what matters most to your donors. So much of nonprofit work is making assumptions, and I think somebody said it earlier, we know what assumptions do. So make sure you're making data-driven decisions with anything that you do that requires code. Implement it in a methodical way, using that matrix to organize where your code goes, and then the documentation matrix to make sure that you're documenting it appropriately. And of course, document. And of course, think about your future selves and making your life easier. As we know, there's a lot that is not in our control, but this is something that is in our control, and hopefully these tips and tricks gave you some thoughts about how to do this in a thoughtful way that not only helps you reach your goals, but also doesn't prevent future pain and suffering. So thank you for my spiel and the little technical difficulty that we had at the beginning. I am just checking the session QA to see if there were any questions, and there was, yay! What is your favorite EN built-in tool that you find is underutilized by nonprofits that can be very resourceful? Probably because of my background in fundraising, the built-in upsell Lightbox is great. We did a lot of work on a platform that will not be named, but it starts with an L and ends in Uminate. So many custom upsell Lightboxes, and this was something that there was a big demand for, and Engaging Network saw that opportunity, says, let's just build it in. It's silly not to have this built in, and you take or you make 0% of the shots that you don't take. Same thing with monthly giving. You don't ask, you don't get. And so it's something very low risk. It has seen high conversion rates. And again, if you're interested in trying out, give it an old A/B test. And I know that, from its kind of first iteration, they've made improvements over the years. So I was talking with somebody earlier who is thinking about using Engaging Networks, and I was telling them one of my favorite things is that this company really listens to its users and will take feedback very seriously, because if you're thinking about it and you think it's a good idea, probably other organizations need it and think it's a good idea. Just checking if there are any others. I don't. Are there any others? I will throw fruit at you, squishy fruit, for asking a question.
Anyone want to ask another question for Sarah? Oh, Clint's got a question for you, Sarah.
Yay. Hi, Clint.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for saying what you just said about how we listen to our clients. The check is in the mail. I'm curious, as you look at what's in our roadmap, what's exciting to you? Hopefully reflects the same trend of listening to clients.
Yeah. So actually, I didn't put it on the slide because I forgot, but a little plug. I'll be doing actually a webinar with Engaging Networks next Tuesday about the new email marketing tools. And one of the pieces of that I was actually working on last night was about segments. I know segments is just rolling out, and we just rolled out the new reporting features. But it's like the new foundation of Engaging Networks. And I love that you've taken this very holistic approach to just better organizing. So you kind of just have to set up your segments once and use them, and then you can use them across reporting, email, donations, soon to be the AI automations. So that's my favorite feature. It's pretty cool. And it's also visual. I'm a visual girl. It has fun Venn diagrams, quick numbers. Yeah, I'm not a good word problem person. I'm also learning my daughter did not get that trait either, as she got her kindergarten assessment. So I think it helps you visualize who you're targeting and understanding who that supporter base is. Marcy is standing, so do you want me to wrap it up?
No, I think we can do another question if anyone has a burning question that they want to ask. Just raise your hand. I don't think there are any others in the app. I'm not seeing any, so.
But this is where you can find me and Corner Shop. I'm happy to answer questions about this topic, anything Engaging Networks or digital nonprofit stuff. And again, you can find me and our friends at Friends of the Earth next Tuesday at 11:30 Eastern. I think it's 11:30 Eastern, 11:45.
It might be 11. I don't know.
11, sometime around between 11 and noon.
Check your email or the Engaging Networks community. You can go in there. There's a link to the webinar. You can register. But yeah, definitely join for that one. Hopefully most of you know we are going to say goodbye to Email Classic next year. So if you're not using the marketing tools yet, you have to move over.
You've got a little bit of time.
You have some time, so don't panic, but it's time to start learning them, and Sarah is going to do a great presentation with Friends of the Earth about how they moved over really easily and are benefiting from all of the features that you can find in that tool. So please join us for that, and let's give Sarah a big round of applause. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, everybody.